Hello everyone, I'm going to tell about the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So let's begin. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were nuclear attacks ordered by Harry S. Truman, President of the United States, against the Empire of Japan. The attacks were carried out on August 6 and 9 in 1945, respectively, which contributed, along with the Soviet-Japanese War, to the surrender of Japan and the end of World War II. After 6 months of heavy bombardment of 67 other cities, the Little Boy nuclear weapon was dropped on Hiroshima on Monday, August 6 in 1945, followed by the detonation of the Fat Man bomb on Thursday, August 9 on Nagasaki. Between 105,000 and 120,000 people died and 130,000 were injured. To date, these bombings constitute the only nuclear attacks in history. It is estimated that by the end of 1945, the bombs had killed 166,000 people in Hiroshima and 80,000 in Nagasaki, totaling some 245,000 deaths. Although only half died on the days of the bombings. Among the victims, 15% to 20% died from injuries or illnesses attributed to radiation poisoning. Since then, some other people have died of leukemia, 231 observed cases, and various cancers, 334 observed, attributed to exposure and radiation released by the bombs. In both cities, the vast majority of deaths were civilians. 6 days after the detonation on Nagasaki, on August 15, the Empire of Japan announced its unconditional surrender to the Allies, becoming formal on September 2, with the signing of the Act of Capitulation. With the surrender of Japan, the Pacific War ended and therefore, World War II, as a consequence of the defeat, the Japanese Empire was occupied by Allied forces led by the United States, with contributions from Australia, British India, the United Kingdom, and New Zealand, and adopted the three anti-nuclear principles, which prohibited it from possessing, manufacture, and introduce the nuclear weapons. After the First World War, a confrontation between Japan, the United States, and the European colonial nations as allied powers in the past against German expansionist colonialism in the Pacific did not seem likely. However, in 1922, the Japanese were offended by the Washington Naval Treaty, which limited the number of ships they could possess, and which ensured the naval supremacy of the American and British fleets. In addition, Japan felt aggrieved by the fact that the European powers occupied territories within what it considered their sphere of influence. So, in 1937, the decision was made to invade China, a conflict that would last 8 years. Prince Konoye was appointed prime minister in 1940 and brought into his cabinet Hideki Tojo and Yosuke Matsuoka, staunch defenders of the expansion of Japan by force. By the end of the same year, Japan signed the three-party tripartite pact with Germany and Italy, which aligned Japan with the Axis powers, with the clear intention of establishing the called Great Sphere of East Asia Co-Prosperity. In July 1941, Japan invaded southern Indochina with its troops, a territory controlled by France, for which the United States decided to retaliate, which consisted of trade embargoes and the reduction of supply of oil to the country by 19%. Foreign trade decreased by 75%. On November 5, Emperor Hirohito and the Japanese government decided to declare war on the United States if the oil embargo was not lifted by the end of the month. On December 7, the Japanese First Fleet launched a massive airstrike on Pearl Harbor. So the next day, December 8, the United States Congress declared war on Japan in response to the request after the famous speech. Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a day that will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by the air and naval force of the Empire of Japan. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The attack on Pearl Harbor took place just a day after Roosevelt authorized the secret project known as the Manhattan Engineering District, which was eventually named the Manhattan Project.